Hello, this is Willie DeCook. Welcome to Surf 64 Theater. Tonight's story of long ago seems surreal. It was written in a time when people entered the water without protection, sharks swam freely, and the beaches were covered with sand. Tales of the East Munster Gremlin recounts the metamorphosis of a sea creature during the surfing phenomenon of the 1960s. The author was also a surfer, student, actor, soldier, and filmmaker in the 1960s. Chapter 1. And from the small lapping waves, a large figure emerged. East Munster, as he was known, had abandoned his pod. Instead of helping his family corral fish, Munster just wanted to play, using the power of the waves to propel him through the water above. And one day, as an act of rebellion, he rowed so far that he became lost. Exhausted and hungry, he washed up on a beach, struggling to get his breath. Suddenly, the East Munster Gremlin was thrown into a chaotic, noisy new world, which he now depended. He had to adapt.
Hey, I'm Walker Fischer. I came to Daytona Beach, Ormond Beach area in 1961. I was 14 years old. I'm a Navy brat and an only child, and I was pretty much at the end of my rope by the time I got here. But in 1961, a miracle happened. My father, who was a naval aviator, pulled some strings and got stationed here, his last duty station. He and my mom rented a house on Ormond Beach, right on the beach, and I met my friend Kent Coleman.
Eventually, East Munster found his new identity as a human. His timing was good. His life as an Ormond Beach surfer had just begun. It was easy for him to blend. All he needed was a pair of baggies, a surfboard, and a few good friends.
And Kent said, "Open your eyes, Walker. This is paradise. You're living on the world's most famous beach. You're at the home of the Daytona 500 stock car race. You're just a hop, skip, and a jump away from Cape Canaveral, where the astronauts are going up on the rockets, and you can watch them there. And best of all, it was the beginning of the surf craze. The Beach Boys were on the radio, top of the charts. The surf movies were coming through at Peabody Auditorium. Bruce Brown would show his films. Greg McGillivray was here. And it was just a fantastic time to be young. And we both learned how to surf in the summer of 1962, and we've been going strong since.
Walker and I were always, together when we'd surf. And, it is a bond. And whenever we go out, I always felt safer. Because Walker was always getting the man of war would sting him, or his neck would break. I remember he went over this wave, and I didn't hear it crunch, but I remember giving him my board and pushing him into shore and thinking nothing of just swimming through large waves. You just never had any fear, when I was together with him.
We glide through life like surfers on a wave. On occasion we just might fall. It's the memories of those great rides, not the wipeouts that we recall. You can always cut back when the way is closing out. Don't ever go over the falls. To speed down the face every chance you get. If you're too fast, you can always stall. Well, I'm caught between the land and sea. At some point, I've got to decide. It's time to choose the best way for me. Do I go or do I just glide? You can't always ride facing the wave. Some moves are harder than weight. Your thinking often becomes confused, but there's no need for you to dismay. Mother Ocean is an ageless beauty. The love
We became friends with a fellow by the name of Jimmy Heath, who had just started selling Hansen surfboards and I believe Dewey Weber surfboards. My brother and I purchased both of ours from him. They were delivered to his front yard across the street from the old Seabreeze High School. Mine was unique, I guess, because I was an oddball at times, and I had a reverse skeg on mine. Jimmy had told me I could do bottom turns better with that. I didn't even know what a bottom turn was.
One of my classmates at Seabreeze High School was Rene Eissler, who was one of the few female surfers in the area and later went on to have a very big career with the East Coast surf teams.
I started surfing in high school and I was becoming, I think, bored with the tennis team and I wanted to do something different, and I saw all the guys having a great time out there and decided it would be a great opportunity to break into something different. So I purchased a board, ordered it from California, and it was an 810 Hansen with redwood stringers, and I just was in love with it. And I taught myself how to surf at the beach.
My good friend Rene Eissler, I had met walking up to the beach one day by our house. And she came walking up with her big floppy hat, and she said, "Let's go surfing." We became really good friends. We started competing. We went up to Flagler Beach. My father was really supportive of us, which that didn't happen with my friends. Most of my friends were just happy my dad was on the beach with us. But he brought us up to Flagler Beach that summer, and we had a surf contest called the Southeastern Surfing Championships.
Traveled with the Daytona Beach Surf Shop team to the East Coast Championships in Virginia Beach, and that's when Dick asked me to join the Surfboards Hawaii team. When I first started, some buddies of mine had a big, huge board. It took two of them. The Hobie brothers had put it together. It was, certainly a backyard glass job. It was just something we loved to do when we did it. We could walk to the beach. I walked all the time until I could drive or somebody came pick me up. But most of the time when I was learning, I walked, carried my surfboard on my head. The beach was very raw, so to speak. Mostly homes along the beach, some motels. It was still very wild.
Mimi Munro was a friend of mine, and to this day still is. I remember one time when I was shooting for Surfing East magazine, she was entered in a contest in Jacksonville Beach, and I think she was 13 at the time. And Surfing East sent me to Jacksonville to photograph her in that meet. Jim Heath was a good friend of mine who owned a print company here in town, and he was a writer for Surfing East magazine, and he knew of my abilities with a camera, so he approached me about being a contributing photographer for Surfing East magazine, and that's how I ended up working for that magazine back in 1965 and 1966.
Well, after I graduated from Seabreeze High School in Daytona Beach, don't ask me why, but I matriculated at Furman University in Greenville, South Carolina, which is in the Piedmont, right up close to the Appalachian Mountains, about as far away as the coast as you could get in South Carolina. And I was getting a little bit itchy. So one time, I brought my board back up to school. Not many students had seen a surfboard in Greenville, South Carolina, but we went to a friend's wedding, and I put the board on the car, and we drove up to this wedding site in Red Bank, New Jersey. And it was a great road trip. I was with a couple of my friends who lived on the dorm with me, and we got up there and we went to the wedding, and then I had to get to the beach. So we went to some of the surf spots that I had read about in the surfing magazines. I think we went to Gilgo Beach and then to the Jersey Shore. Now, being a Florida boy, I was very used to just taking the board out wherever you wanted to go on the beach. And when I went out in the Jersey Beach, things are a little bit different. I'd never really experienced a private beach before with no trespassing signs and private club signs. And I went out anyway, but I was rather rudely informed that I was indeed trespassing, and this was their beach and they had paid for it. and strangers were not welcome, which is sort of antithetical to the surfing culture that I was used to. But anyway, this friend of mine, Joel, and I decided to take a road trip back down the East Coast. We had a tent, and so we went down the Jersey Shore and the New Jersey Turnpike and paying all the tolls, and we got to Atlantic City and the famous boardwalk, and sure enough, there are a couple of little surfers surfing right in front of the famous pier there. And from then on, we just worked our way down the coast, and we got to Virginia Beach. And poor Joel, who is not a surfer, he was a Carolina boy, a very patient guy, and he would shoot some of the camera scenes when I was off somewhere. And so we shot Virginia Beach, and there was a lot of people there, and it was kind of more like Florida. They were a little more welcoming. Then we went on down to the Outer Banks of North Carolina, and boy, was I excited, because this was the big wave spot that I knew about on the East Coast. And from there on, we headed down into the deep south in South Carolina. There's a little town called Beaufort, South Carolina, and just east of Beaufort is a park called Hunting Island. I believe it's a state park. And once again, it's just a beach break, very scenic beach in that the erosion had come right up to the tree line and past it. So there are a lot of trees on the sand and in the water.
When we began surfing in Daytona, there weren't any rules or weren't any laws against where you could surf. Once a few started surfing, the good fathers of Daytona started to restrict us to where we went. There were two places, if I recall, that we were allowed to surf, and that was Silver Beach and I believe north of Grenada, or somewhere in there. And we were only given about 100 yards of beach line, and that's where we were allowed to surf.
And we didn't really enter any contests. We just enjoyed surfing, and we'd just go out every day that there was good surf. You know, like, and we thought every day was a good day to surf.
Saturday night would arrive and we would want to go to a surf movie. And our town would sponsor these surf movies at the community centers. All the sharp cars from the 1950s would pull up in the parking lot and race their engines, and we would be walking up there in our surf jackets and our long hair and our Huarache sandals, and we'd go buy our ticket for maybe $3, probably $2. And we'd go in this musty smelling community center in Daytona Beach with some old wooden chairs and sit there and start hooting and hollering over every wave that came across the scene. and we relived every wave. For weeks and weeks after the surf movie was over, we would be surfing on our tables and our chairs at home. We'd be going down to the beach on the pier and hanging five, and we would mimic everything on the land and try to mimic it in the sea. Surf movies were a big part of our Saturday night entertainment.
All of us, we went on safaris together, and it was great. And I had a 37-4 Deuce Coupe, and we would stick the boards in the big, huge trunk, and we managed to fit ourselves in the front and only seat. And one time we were on the beach, and after surfing, we came up the Ormond approach, and the antique car parade happened to be on, but we got waved into the parade, and we were a big hit in our palm frond woven hats.
I think I can sum up my attraction to surfing in 2 words: liquid and space. I've always been attracted to water. Growing up, even though there were very few times that we were near the coast, my folks would always try and find a house near the water, a stream or a lake or a waterfall. When we moved back to Florida, I thought I was in 7th heaven. I was right here on the beach. And the fact that you had water all around you, you know, your body is what, 80% water, something like that. There's just this attraction that you, and especially if you live in a beach town, or even not, you just want to be there. The second is space. Looking out over the ocean, this magnificent panorama, nothing in the way. And in Florida, we're very lucky in that respect. There are no oil derricks offshore. It's just 180 degrees of pure water and blue sky. And not only blue sky, but ever-changing skies. Hurricanes, clouds, thunderstorms. Florida is the thunderstorm capital of the world, and when these billowing clouds come up over the ocean and the lightning starts striking, well, it's primal. It is primal, and I think that, to me, is the most attractive thing about being around the ocean and the beach, is that your body connects with all of this and everything else falls off. You just become part of the natural scene.
As the years passed, the East Munster Gremlin continued to evolve, using the experience in the waves to guide him through life. He knew better than ever when to charge and when to pull back. He understood that his life as a surfer was as much about the overall experience as it was about the act of riding a wave. But even as he aged, the Gremlin continued to play in the sea, looking for that perfect wave. He used the time between waves to go into that zone of carefree, wandering thoughts, always scanning the horizon in hopes of seeing his pod again.
Well, I'm caught between the land and sea. At some point I've got to decide. It's time to choose the best way for me. Do I go or do I just glide? Yes, I'm caught between the land and sea. At some point I've got to decide. It's time to choose the best way for me. Do I go or do I just glide? Do I go or do I just glide? Do I go or do I just glide? Do I go or do I just glide?